Some warnings do not come from the living. They come from memories still lingering in the space around you. From a deep intuition the rational mind cannot name in time. From a soul that has passed on, yet has never truly left you. Aries. Aries. Be honest with yourself in this moment. Lately, have you noticed that the way you look at a woman you know very well has quietly changed? Not because she said something wrong, not because of a specific event, but because of a strange feeling, a sudden chill running down your spine, a silent moment in which you suddenly realize that something is no longer right beneath the surface you once trusted. This is not suspicion. This is not imagination. For Aries, when this feeling appears, it always carries meaning, because Aries is guided by the most primal instinct, by raw, unfiltered truth, by an inner voice that no mask can fully conceal. And when your intuition speaks, it is often the moment a door to truth is about to open. In this video, I will not tell sensational stories to create fear. I am not speaking of curses. I am not painting superstitious images. I am here to help Aries understand why, at this time, your astrological energy is activating a truth that is difficult to accept. Why the image of a departed soul, through the lens of astrology and mysticism, appears not as a threat, but as a protective warning. And most importantly, what you need to do to avoid being pulled into someone else's tragic ending, to avoid trading away your own light out of misplaced compassion. If you are Aries, and you feel these words touching something very real inside you, pause here and write this in the comments. I am ready to listen to the truth, so I can live in alignment with my own light. This is not just an affirmation. It is a way of synchronizing yourself with the energy now guiding Aries out of misaligned bonds and back to the place your soul truly belongs. And don't leave just yet, because next we will go deeper into a question many Aries have felt but never fully named. Why is Aries so often the sign that senses the truth before another person's tragedy fully reveals itself? And why does this warning connect directly to your own destiny? Aries is not a sign that lives in memories, and yet, paradoxically, you are the one who feels memory most clearly when it needs to be heard. Not ordinary personal memory, but subtle imprints of experience, of wounds, of events that occurred before you could understand why they left such a powerful echo. That is why, at certain moments in life, you feel as if something is calling you from within. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply enough that you cannot ignore it. In astrology, Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of primal instinct, instant reaction, and raw truth before it is shaped into words. Mars does not ask for permission. Mars does not persuade. Mars acts only when it knows. And when Mars begins activating the deepest regions of the birth chart, where the 8th house and the 12th house intersect, what awakens is not fear. It is awareness. The 8th house is not only physical death, it represents emotional deaths. The death of beliefs, the death of illusions about how we see others. The 12th house is not only the soul or the subconscious. It is where unnamed memories live, where intuitions that logic cannot explain wait patiently to be acknowledged. When Mars activates these two realms, Aries begins to feel what others choose to avoid. You are not searching for the truth. The truth finds you. You may not say anything to anyone. You may continue behaving as usual. But inside, something has shifted. You look at a familiar woman with different eyes. Not judgmental, not conclusive. Just, you no longer feel at ease. And for a sign known for decisiveness and directness like Aries, this sense of uncertainty is often the strongest signal of all. I do not believe that souls return to frighten the living. I have never believed in fear-based stories used to manipulate belief. But I do believe in living memory. I believe that experiences, mistakes, and pain do not disappear. When a person leaves this world, they remain as a form of spiritual information, and only those who are sensitive enough, mature enough, and brave enough can feel them when they need to be heard, not to haunt, but to prevent a cycle from repeating. At its deepest level, a warning is not punishment. A warning is a privilege. It appears when you have walked far enough to no longer be a victim of circumstance, but not so far that turning back is impossible. Not everyone receives warnings. Many people live their entire lives inside repetition, inside confusion, inside relationships that drain them, without ever understanding why. Only those capable of changing the outcome are warned before everything becomes irreversible. And Aries, you are one of them. What unsettles you may not be her actions, but her energy, a sense of misalignment, a subtle disconnect between words and intuition, an emptiness in her eyes you never noticed before. These signs are easy to dismiss, especially for those who live by logic. But for Aries, gifted by Mars with the ability to recognize truth faster than thought, ignoring intuition often comes at a very high cost. The deeper human lesson here is not about avoiding someone. It is about honoring your own inner signals. You do not need to accuse anyone. You do not need to prove anything. Maturity does not live in explaining everything with words. It lives in knowing when to stop and let silence speak. Some connections do not end in conflict. They end in awakening. You are not responsible for saving anyone from their fate. You are only responsible for not stepping into that fate with them. This is where many Aries have stumbled in the past. Out of kindness, out of honesty, out of the belief that if they were sincere enough, everything would change. But astrology does not operate on desire. It operates on cycles. And this cycle is asking you to learn a higher lesson. The difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. You may be asking yourself right now, what if I'm wrong? That is the question of someone with a conscience. But allow yourself to ask one more question. What if I'm right and I don't listen? Because sometimes the price of ignoring intuition is not the loss of a relationship, it is the loss of yourself while trying to hold on to something that is no longer healthy. If these words touch you, allow yourself to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and answer honestly inside your own heart. Have you ever had a powerful intuition about someone, but didn't dare to trust it? If so, you may share that in the comments. Not to tell your story to others, but to confirm to yourself that you are learning how to listen. And if you feel ready to step out of old cycles, write one very simple sentence: I choose to trust my intuition. This is not superstition. It is an inner commitment, a way of placing yourself on the same frequency as the energy guiding Aries. Right now, don't leave just yet, because in the next part, we will speak about something very few people dare to face. What happens if Aries continues to stay in a connection that the soul has already warned against, and why leaving at the right time is sometimes the greatest act of love, not only for you, but for everyone involved. There is a very subtle truth that not everyone is quiet enough to recognize. Sometimes, the person who appears to be the main character in a story is not the center of the issue. They are simply a mirror, reflecting a wounded state of energy. And for Aries, the woman you sense instability around should not be viewed through the lens of right and wrong, good or bad. She should be understood through the symbolic language of astrology. In Aries' birth chart, this woman often does not represent a specific person. She represents a wounded Venus. Venus is the planet of love, self-worth, gentleness, and the ability to give and receive emotion. When Venus functions in harmony, people know how to love without possession, how to be close without intrusion. But when Venus is wounded, I love no longer feels like a safe place. It becomes a conflicted defense mechanism. A wounded Venus is not loud. It does not attack directly. It often shows itself through quiet jealousy, unspoken, yet constantly present, through emotional dependency, unacknowledged, yet unable to stand on its own, and sometimes through very subtle control expressed as weakness, making others feel responsible, guilty, as if leaving would make them cruel. And this is where many Aries begin to feel uneasy. Not because you are afraid of this woman, but because you begin to be careful with yourself, careful with your words, careful with your actions, careful with your true emotions. When a connection requires you to shrink your honesty just to keep the peace, that is when your soul is speaking. I want to say this very slowly, very clearly, and very humanly. Her tragedy does not come from you. It does not come from you being stronger, clearer, or unable to meet someone else's endless emotional needs. Her tragedy comes from her refusal to take responsibility for her own shadow. No one can enter that shadow for her. Not you, not love, not sacrifice. Aries, you were not born to pretend. You were not designed to live a double life. Mars, your ruling planet, does not allow you to prolong misalignment just to keep the surface calm. Aries takes responsibility for their actions, their emotions, their choices, and that is precisely why you are often the one who leaves before the tragedy unfolds, not because you lack care, but because you see what others are not yet ready to face. You may have blamed yourself before. You may have wondered if you were too cold, too direct, too decisive. But pause here and look deeper. Aries' decisiveness is not emotional absence. It is respect for truth. You understand that extending a connection built on dependency only deepens the wound for both people. You understand that real love cannot exist where one person refuses to grow. The life lesson here is simple and yet difficult to practice. You are not obligated to save someone who does not want to save themselves. This does not deny compassion. It simply places compassion where it belongs. You can empathize with another's pain without becoming the place they hide from responsibility. You can love without sacrificing your wholeness. There is a quiet kind of suffering many Aries have experienced, the pain of always being the strong one, the understanding one, the one who carries everything. But true Aries strength does not live in enduring more than others. It lives in saying enough before your soul is depleted. That is not abandonment. That is self-protection. If, as you listen, your heart feels a little heavy, trust that this is not sadness. It is recognition. Recognition that perhaps there was a time you stayed beside someone who made you cautious with your own truth. If this resonates, you are not alone, and you are not wrong. You may share in the comments if you have experienced this. No details needed, just a quiet acknowledgement that you understand the feeling. And if you feel that you are standing before an important choice, ask yourself this: is my silence right now to avoid conflict or to betray my intuition? The answer to that question can take you very far. Don't leave this video yet. The next part will take you to a deeper layer of the story. What happens to Aries energy if you continue to stay in a connection built on subtle control, and why astrology shows that leaving at the right time does not only save you, but opens an entirely new cycle of growth. For Aries destiny, there is a very important moment in the journey of Aries that astrology names with great clarity, yet most people experience only as a vague emotional shift. It is the moment when Aries enters a North Node cycle, activating the first house on the level of the birth chart. This is when the soul is pulled back to its own center. In real life, this is the moment you are no longer allowed to live for someone else, to carry someone else, or to save anyone else in your place. The first house is the house of identity. It is who I am before I am someone's child, someone's partner, or someone's support system. When the North Node touches this house, the universe does not ask, Whether you are kind enough, it asks one very direct question. Are you living in alignment with your own truth? And for Aries, this question cannot be avoided. Through silence or sacrifice, many Aries have passed through a phase where they believed love meant endurance, that if they were patient enough, forgiving enough, strong enough, the other person would eventually change. But the North Node does not arrive to reinforce that illusion. It arrives to end the savior role. It arrives to say this clearly. Your soul was not born to be a life raft for people who refuse to learn how to swim. When this cycle begins, you may feel guilty. You may feel more selfish than before. You may notice you are no longer as easy as you once were. But this is not moral decline. This is spiritual maturity. Because for the first time, you begin to distinguish between true compassion and compassion placed in the wrong place. There is a message being sent to you now. Very quiet, yet unmistakably clear. A message from the soul, inspoken through symbols. It does not shout. It does not force. It simply whispers, close enough for you to hear. If you are willing to pause, do not stay out of misplaced compassion. Do not confuse love with self-sacrifice. They are not the same, even though they are often mixed together. In emotionally intense relationships, love allows both people to grow. Self-sacrifice keeps one person frozen, while the other slowly empties. When you remain in the savior role, you unknowingly remove the other person's personal responsibility. And personal responsibility, no matter how painful, is the only true foundation of freedom. No one can be free if someone else is always carrying the consequences of their choices. This truth aligns deeply with the spiritual values many Americans were raised with. God does not ask you to carry another person's cross. Faith does not teach us to lose ourselves to save someone who refuses to change. Faith teaches each individual to take responsibility for their own path and to respect the path of others, even when that path leads them away from you. Aries, if you are feeling torn right now, allow yourself to understand this important truth. You are not abandoning anyone. You are simply refusing to walk with them into a place where you do not belong. There are thresholds that if you cross them, you lose yourself. The North Node appears to prevent that from happening, not through fear, but through clarity. You may have stayed too long in the past. You may have believed that if you left, everything would collapse. But look back honestly. You stayed. And what truly changed? Or was it only you who became more tired, more silent, more distant from who you really are? Astrology does not judge you for this. It simply notes that the lesson has been learned long enough. And now, it is time to move to a higher level of awareness. When Aries chooses themselves during this cycle, something unexpected happens. You do not become cold. You become more truthful. You do not lose your kindness. You place it where it belongs. And then, New relationships begin to find space to appear. Healthier ones, more mature ones, not because you went searching for them, but because you are no longer blocking the way, with connections that have already completed their purpose. If these words leave you silent for a few seconds, trust that this is a good sign. It is the moment your soul realizes it no longer needs to prove its worth through sacrifice. And if you feel you are standing before an important doorway, gently press like on this video, not for me, but for yourself, as a quiet confirmation that you are choosing light, choosing truth, choosing a path that does not betray who you are. And don't close this journey yet, because the next part touches on a question that is very real, very human, and very deep. What happens to Aries' destiny when you dare to leave the savior role? And why, after each time you truly choose yourself, Aries enters a cycle of growth that is stronger, both spiritually and materially. There is something rarely spoken of gently, because it touches the deepest place in the listener's heart. What happens if Aries continues to stay in a connection that intuition has already warned against? Not through threats, not through dramatic tragedy, but through quiet consequences, in slow, subtle, and painful, precisely because they unfold little by little. When Aries stays too long in a relationship filled with unspoken tension, Mars, your ruling planet, begins to get pulled into a cycle of conflict. Not loud arguments, not obvious battles, but inner conflict. The daily question of whether to speak your truth or remain silent. The constant suppression of your natural instincts to avoid hurting someone else. And for a sign born to live authentically, that kind of suppression is a deep form of erosion. Mars is warrior energy. It exists to act, to clear paths, to lead the way. When this energy is used correctly, Aries feels alive, focused, purposeful. But when Mars becomes trapped in drama, in unhealthy emotions, in relationships that constantly require one more explanation, that energy does not disappear, it turns inward. And that is when Aries begins to feel exhausted without knowing why. You may still work, you may still smile, you may still appear strong in the eyes of others, but inside, a part of you is slowly going quiet. Not because you are becoming weaker, but because you are using your strength to hold something that no longer supports you. And that is the deepest pain. Not losing a relationship, but losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. This truth is difficult to accept, especially for Aries, a sign that believes deeply in the power of action and will. But some battles were never meant to be won. Some connections were never meant to last. And the maturity of Aries does not lie in fighting until exhaustion, but in recognizing when to retreat in order to protect the soul. You were not born to be stuck. Aries was born to open roads, to go first, to take risks, but the risks of purpose, not the risks of self-betrayal. When you are in a relationship that makes you constantly question your feelings, shrink your true self, or apologize for your nature. That is no longer love. It is a very subtle form of captivity. You may have told yourself that, with more time, things would improve. But listen carefully now. Time does not heal relationships built on imbalance. Time only makes that imbalance feel more familiar. And familiarity, sometimes, is the greatest enemy of the soul. It convinces you to accept what is no longer right, simply because you have been there too long. Mars within you grows tired when every day becomes a negotiation. A negotiation between who you are and who you think you must become to keep someone else comfortable. But your soul was not born to be a refuge for another person's fear. You were not born to calm anxieties that someone else refuses to face. And then one day, very quietly, you notice something has changed. You are no longer angry, no longer arguing, no longer trying to explain. There is only emptiness. That is the sign that Mars is exhausted. Not because you are weak, but because you have fought too long on a battlefield that was never yours. Aries. If you are listening to this and feel your throat tighten, allow that sensation to exist. It is not failure. It is a reminder that you have moved too far away from your own center. And there is no shame in admitting that. On the contrary, it is an act of courage. The greatest tragedy is not separation, not distance, not losing a familiar role. The greatest tragedy is looking back and no longer recognizing yourself. When the fire that once made you feel alive is reduced to a small flame used only to keep others warm, while you stand outside in the cold. Aries was born for movement, to move forward, to carry a pioneering spirit into new territory, not to circle endlessly through unhealthy emotions, where everything repeats but nothing truly evolves. When you stay too long in such a relationship, you delay not only your happiness, but the path you were born to walk. If you feel yourself being held back, ask quietly, what is holding you? True love, or fear of hurting someone? A duty born from the heart, or a duty built from guilt? The answer does not need to be spoken. It only needs to be acknowledged in silence. And if in this moment you realize you have been carrying the weight for too long, gently share in the comments. Do you feel held back? Or are you beginning to move forward? Whatever your answer, it deserves respect, because asking the question itself is already the first step toward liberation. Do not assume that moving forward means abandoning someone. Sometimes, moving forward simply means stopping the betrayal of yourself. And in the next part, we will talk about something essential. What happens when Aries truly dares to step out of this cycle of conflict? And why immediately afterward, destiny often opens a new door, one where warrior energy is finally returned to its true purpose. There comes a stage in the maturation of Aries where the universe no longer asks you to be stronger, faster, or more aggressive. Instead, the universe asks you to slow down, slow enough to recognize that not every battle requires your charge. And this is where astrology becomes deeply practical, deeply human, and closely aligned with your everyday life. When Mars, the instinctive force of action within Aries, meets Saturn, the planet of boundaries, discipline, and responsibility, a subtle yet deeply important lesson is activated. This is not a lesson about winning. It is a lesson about choice, about knowing when to move forward, and just as importantly, knowing when to stop. Holding boundaries does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean building emotional walls. Holding boundaries is the deepest act of self-respect a mature Aries can offer themselves. It is the moment you realize that not every emotion belonging to someone else requires your immediate response. Not every accusation needs your explanation. And not every crisis is your responsibility. Mars within you is fast, strong, conditioned to react the moment something feels unstable. Saturn arrives to whisper something different. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in not reacting at all. Silent observation is not avoidance. It is how you give yourself the space to see the full picture before deciding. It is how you step out of emotional whirlwinds, instead of being pulled into situations that do not truly belong to you. At first, that silence may feel uncomfortable. Aries is not accustomed to standing still. Aries is built for movement. But trust, this silence used wisely does not weaken you. It sharpens you. When you stop responding from old habits, you begin to see what emotions once obscured. You start to recognize who genuinely respects your boundaries and who has simply grown accustomed to you always being there to fix things for them. Trusting actions more than words becomes essential during this phase. Not because words are meaningless, but because they are easily manipulated. Actions are not. Actions reveal who is willing to take responsibility. Actions reveal who truly wants to change. And actions make it painfully clear who speaks only to keep you close, with no intention of walking forward beside you. Aries, you do not need to argue to prove the truth. The truth reveals itself the moment you stop defending it with words. When you step back, the actions or the absence of them speak on their own. And although this realization may hurt at first, in time it becomes the greatest gift, because it releases you from the role of having to understand, empathize endlessly, or explain what was never meant to be rescued. The maturity of Aries does not lie in explosive strength. It does not lie in fighting to the end. It does not lie in how much you can endure. Your maturity lies in knowing which battles deserve your fire, and which ones will only extinguish it. You were not born to put out fires that others ignite and then abandon. There are moments when not entering the battle is the bravest act of all, because it requires facing guilt, facing disapproval, facing misunderstanding. But Saturn teaches this truth. Self-respect does not require universal approval. You do not need everyone to understand you. In order to live truthfully, when you hold your boundaries, something unexpected happens. Life begins to simplify. Relationships built on dependency quietly fall away. Healthier connections, where both people stand firmly on their own, begin to find space to emerge. You no longer have to strain to maintain balance. You no longer have to guess which version of yourself is needed today so that someone else does not collapse. And within that simplicity, Mars slowly returns to its rightful place. No longer drained by drama, no longer trapped in old cycles. The warrior energy of Aries reconnects with its true mission: to build, to lead, to initiate what matters. You begin to feel alive again, not loudly, not explosively, but steadily. If at this point you feel a strange calm spreading through your chest, trust that you are moving in the right direction. This is the feeling of an Aries learning to choose the higher path of their destiny. Not the easiest path, but the one that does not betray the soul. And if you are ready to mark this choice, you may leave a simple comment beneath this video. I choose truth, not illusion, not to prove anything to others, but to remind yourself that, from this moment on, you will no longer return to battles that were never yours. You are moving forward with your fire preserved for its true purpose. There is a quiet truth that, once touched, dissolves fear. The soul does not return to pull you down. It does not appear to haunt or reopen wounds. The soul appears to lift you into the position you truly belong to. At the moment you are strong enough not to misinterpret the message. If you have stayed with this video until now, that speaks volumes about you. Aries, you are willing to face truth even when it is uncomfortable. You are honest with yourself even when honesty requires departure. And above all, you are brave enough to live authentically rather than habitually. Not everyone can do that. Many remain in depleted connections simply to avoid emptiness. You chose truth, even when truth demands courage. Hold this truth deeply within you. Leaving is not the failure of love. It is the victory of awakening. You are not turning your back on anyone. You are simply turning your face toward your own light. And when an Aries does that, the universe always responds. Not immediately, not with loud miracles, but with changes that are very real: lightness in the heart, clarity in the mind, and a sense of peace that did not exist when you were still trying to hold everything together. Right now, you may not see anything concrete ahead. The path may feel quiet, undefined, but trust this. From the perspective of someone who has watched many astrological cycles unfold, every time Aries dares to sever a karmic attachment, a gift is already waiting. Sometimes it is a talent that has been dormant for years, finally rising to the surface. Sometimes it is an opportunity that could never be grasped before, because your energy was being drained in the wrong place. And sometimes it is an entirely new door, one that only opens when you have the courage to walk alone. That is why, in the next video, I will speak about that gift. The gift that Aries receives only after releasing the role of savior. A gift not meant for those who hesitate, but for those brave enough to leave what has already completed its purpose. It is something very specific, very practical, and deeply connected to the path Aries is about to walk. If this video has resonated with you, gently like and share it to extend this energy to others who may also be standing at an important crossroads. There is no need to say much. Your presence here already speaks of deep understanding. And if you wish to continue this journey with me, stay with the channel, because the journey of Aries does not end with leaving. It begins the moment you choose to live aligned with your own light.